All right, hello everyone. Hopefully you guys have been doing well and resting well so far. Hopefully midterms are going okay. But for this lecture, I will be basically going over facial rigs by using blend shapes. So teaching you guys how to sculpt blend shapes on a character face, as well as how to add controllers for them. So using set driven keys to add controllers for your facial blend shapes. And then afterwards, after animating them, hopefully you guys will get something like this.
Springtime, basically.
So that's something small I animated over an audio clip. But yeah, let's get started and look into the nitty gritty details of what's going on. So here I have my, this is the file that I basically exported the animation from. So if you guys take a look at all these controllers over here, at all of these controllers, so I have these joints that basically deal with my entire head. So this is like my master controller. Then I have one specifically for the neck. I also have these controllers set. So for example, like here is a controller for the eyelid. So for the eyelid, as well as a controller for the mouth. So if you kind of click in here, I have like a tooth controller also set in with that mouth as well, and all that kind of fun stuff. And over here, you guys can see that I also have like an aim constraint with these eyes. All right, so our goal in the end is to basically be able to learn how to create something like this. So we'll start from start to finish. So first of all, we'll be covering how to create blend shapes using Maya sculpting tools. Second of all, we'll be adding controllers. And then lastly, we'll be making set driven keys. All right, cool. So let's get started. So over here is the model that I've sculpted, and then I skinned, and I was able to create blend shapes out of them. So if you go over to Windows, then go over to Animation Editor, Shape Editor, then we see that we can toggle basically our entire blend shape menu. So for instance, for the mouth, I have like this horizontal kind of stretch thing going on over here, or like one that opens up on the bottom, and then one that moves kind of like right side up. And if you guys notice, I'm able to add these controllers and create set driven keys such that this controller will basically control, if you look off to the right side, this thing basically controls my toggle for right side up. All right, so let's learn how to basically create all of these blend shapes. I'm going to pull up the retopologized head. All right, so now we're here with the file without the controllers. So when you guys add blend shapes, if you notice off to the channel box editor, when I click on this head, you will see that there's some history going on here. And these history things over here are basically created every single time you create a new blend shape. So when you guys are trying to delete the history of a model, instead of deleting the history, for example, like clicking on this button, you want to go over to Edit, delete all by type, and you want to delete non-deformer history. And non-deformer history essentially deletes all the history that isn't really related to blend shapes. Okay, perfect. So let's get started by creating a blend shape where we can do something like, let's do the bottom one. So let's make a blend shape that does this. Sounds good? All right, cool. So what I want to do, I'm going to go over to non-texture mode and hard surface. Then I'm going to go over to our sculpting tools over here. So generally when we sculpt, we can use sculpts to create blend shapes and stuff. So for example, if I select this mesh, then I can paint on top of it and it looks super funky. But yeah, let's create a blend shape first. So first we create a blend shape, and we're gonna basically make this mouth move down. So I'm gonna create this blend shape, and I'm gonna name it mouth. Name it mouth 2 so it doesn't coincide with the original mouth. And then I'm going to add a target. And I'm going to name this target mouth down. All right. So after we create this blend shape, let's get to sculpting. So if you notice, if I want to basically make this mouth go down, then maybe I want to use the grab tool and move it down myself. But if you notice, upon using the grab tool, then it basically grabs everything on the top lip. And we don't want to grab the top lip. We only want to grab like the bottom lip, which is the part that we just want to like move down. So in order to do that, what we can do is that we could freeze the top lip in place, so then only the bottom lip is can be subject to any kind of sculpting that we do on it. And in order to do that, there is something called the freeze tool. And this freeze tool basically allows you to paint on top of the regions in order to freeze those positions in place. So for example, if I think I might need to assign a new material, existing material to Lambert. There we go. So everything in the freeze tool covered in blue pretty much just corresponds to like parts of the mesh that cannot be edited. So for instance, if I try to use the grab tool and I try to pull this up, then it's not letting me move the mesh. Whereas like if I use the grab tool on like the part of the mesh that is not influenced by the blue, then I'm able to like pull it out. So I can't pull stuff that is blue. And then it's hard to pull out if it's like a little bit of a light blue, but I can pull stuff that is white. That is essentially what the freeze tool does. So a lot of the brush tools in Maya have pretty similar hotkeys. So for example, if you want to erase, then Control, then click and drag. So to erase. And if you want to smooth, it's just shift and click and drag. All right, but we want to freeze the top lip. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to paint over the top lip part. Maybe zoom in a little, use B, and then click and drag to shrink the brush size. That's good. Yeah. Cool. Furthermore, I have symmetry turned on, which means that I can paint both sides at once. So I'm just going to carefully go inside this mouth and freeze all those parts that I do not want moved. Looks pretty good for the most part. Cool. And then maybe I don't want to freeze like part of this either, but it's fine. All right, cool. I'm going to try to go in the mouth. It can be a little tough, but see what's the best we can do. We'll just deal with it. All right, cool. So I'm going to take my grab tool over here. Then I'm going to scale my brush up. So then it carries down this mouth as a whole. And there we go. If you guys notice, like parts that I didn't color blue seem to be influenced in the mouth. So maybe if I go in and paint those in, it'd be nice. It's a little inconvenient, but we'll have to manage. Good for purposes. So let's move this lip down. All right. And there we go. Sometimes you see a little, some of these funky artifacts. If I go into smooth mode and if I go back, then like these funky artifacts are more or less kind of fixed for themselves. But yeah, the basics of making a mouth kind of go down, and you notice like the lip might seem a little flat, so you can always go in and pull it out a little yourself. Maybe like this chin is a little funky, so I'm going to pull it up. Maybe I want this part of the lip to move down. But yeah, other than that, I seem pretty satisfied with this going on over here. Maybe if I want to move like a little bit of the neck down, it'd be good too. But yeah, otherwise I'm pretty satisfied with what's going on here. And you can always like go back and then change the freeze, like what you want to basically freeze as well. Change the freezing weights. Looks good to me though. All right, cool. So this is going to be my one blend shape where my mouth goes down. So if I go back to the shape editor and I unhit the edit key, so then this basically locks this this blend shape in place. Then we have this fully formed blend shape where our mouth can move down like that. All right, perfect. So let's make another one. This time I want to move this part of the mouth up. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add another target. Call this maybe mouth up. And this time, because it was such a pain to basically have to paint inside the mouth, what we can do here, so I'm going to flood this entire thing with blue, erase, is that I can basically go in and put my mouth down, and so it's easier for me to basically access the mouth over here. There we go. All right, cool. Now I'm going to sculpt it. So sculpt this part of the mouth to go up, maybe like that. Oh, looks a little weird. Cool. Sculpt the roof of the mouth a little up. All right, cool. I'll call that a day. The mouth up. We get this. All right, cool. Another thing we can do is that we can, let's do like a blinking blend shape now. So I'm going to create a new blend shape, call it eyes, add a new target, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the left eye for this, left eye. So left is actually going to be this eye over here. So if I go in, I'm going to turn off my symmetry because I don't want to influence the right eye. Go over here to my freeze tool, paint this all over, and then let's have it so that the top part of the eyelid goes down. So I'm going to name this left top eyelid. So then I'm going to erase this part. Maybe it helps to actually hide the eye. Erase this part. I actually don't want to modify too much of like the interior. So I'm mostly just gonna leave the inside of this blue, smooth out. Cool. And then I'm going to use the grab tool once again. Grab tool to basically move our eyelid down. And in this case, it might be helpful for you to unhide the eye to essentially see where the eyelid is going with respect to the eye. So once again, I'm also keeping in mind that my bottom eyelid, I might want to add blend shapes for it to kind of go up as well. So I'm not going to move my top eyelid all the way down. So it seems like if I go to smooth mode, this part's a little funky. So I'm gonna perhaps move it out a little. Maybe adjust it. So there's not that much influence. In terms of eyes, usually the top part of the eyelid kind of overlaps the bottom part of the eyelid. So it goes a little over the bottom part of the eyelid. All right, but I think I'll call that a day for this eyelid. So now I have an eyelid that kind of closes. Now I can basically paint the same thing over to the other eye, but that might be a pain because then like if my eyelid blend shape isn't symmetrical, then it basically can't be, then we're gonna get like two different blinking looking things. So instead, what I can do is I can mirror the blend shape that I already have over to the other side. In order to do that, double click or right click, then I go to duplicate target, creates a copy of the target. I'm going to call this right top eyelid. Then I'm going to do something called flip target. What flip target does is that it basically moves the blend shape over to the other side. So now I have one that makes the right eye blink, the one that makes the left eye blink. All right. So that's it for blend shapes. And let's move on to doing set driven keys for our already existing blend shapes. All right, so let's make set driven keys. And generally, I like to work in the pose sculpting workspace with this thing, because I find that you have your shape editor over here, then you have your tool settings over here, attribute editors and your channel box editors. It's very convenient just to keep track of everything. So I'm going to be basically creating controls for our blend shapes, so then we could just exclusively use the viewport in order to animate our character instead of having to open up this shape editor and having to like key shapes. So I'm gonna go over to the rigging menu and then create a controller. And let's have this be an eye controller for blinking. So I'm gonna put up this controller. I'm gonna put this controller right next to our eye. So I'm gonna make this rotate 90 degrees and move this to be around over here. And basically this controller is going to control our left top blink. So in order to do that, I could place it over here. So circle controllers are a little bit generic. So what I'm gonna do is that I am going to actually reshape this controller. Oops. I'm gonna reshape this controller. So then, oops. Oh. So then it kind of looks like something in which you would grab like an eyelid. So maybe like that. And then I'm going to rotate it, move it like maybe over there. All right, cool. So I want to make sure like this thing is in its rightful position. It kind of helps to basically have this controller like right on top of where it's actually going to be placed in the model. So maybe I'm going to place it like that. All right, cool. If you want, you could also duplicate this and move it over to the other side as well. So if we mirror this over, these transformations, flip, and then move it over. There we go. And freeze transformations, delete history. Always be sure to freeze your transformations on your controllers before you start attaching them to anything riggable. Cool, so let's deal with these eye controllers. So this one is going to control the right top blink, or the left top blink, sorry. So in order to do something called set driven keys, we are going to go over to the animation editor, then we're going to go over to key, and then set driven key, and then click on set. So I'm going to load the driver and then the driven. So the driver is what controls the blend shape, and the driven is the blend shape itself. So I'm going to load the driver, have this selected, click on load driver, and then afterwards I'm going to load the driven. And in this case, our face is going to be the driven. So we click on our face, go to the eye input. I have the eye selected, so I'm going to load the driven, and it's right over here. Okay, so what I want to do is that I want the translate Y attribute to deal with this thing blinking. So I'm going to select translate Y, and then for this eye, I want the translate Y component of this controller to influence the left top blink. So when I click on key, this basically means that when this controller is at this position, then the left top blink is going to have an influence of 0. Okay, now let's move our controller up And I'm gonna in fact move my controller up to 0.5. So now, when the controller is up here, I want my, sorry. So 0.5, let's do negative 0.5. So my controller's over here. I want my left top blink to be down here. And then I'm gonna click key again. And this basically means that when our controller moves down, then I want my left top blink to have an influence of 1. So then what happens in the end is if I move this up, we get this nice blinking motion. Whereas if I move it to the left or the right, because I didn't set that attribute to refer to anything in the eye, then nothing happens. In that case, because this controller is only controlling the blinking motion of the eye, then I can basically lock all other attributes, so then the animator doesn't have to get confused what controls what. So because this controller is only going to be useful in the Y direction, because we set our blend shape to be that, then I'm going to lock all the other attributes. And let's do the same thing for the other eye. So over here, load driver, and then for the face, load driven, which is already loaded. In practice, you guys want to make sure that you're naming your controllers something interpretable. So for example, this one might be like the right top eye blink controller or something like that. But I want this to, the translate Y to influence the right top blink. Key here, and then when this thing goes to negative 0.5, I want my right top blink to go to 1. It's a similar story over here. What we can do is that if we want these eyes to blink both at the same time, I'm going to set their translate Y's to 0, is that I can create a kind of like a eye controller overall. So create a circle, bring this circle forth. Let's have this controller basically control the eyebrows. So in my outliner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a parent constraint for this controller with these two. First of all, let's rename these controllers for clarity's sake. So this can be left top eyelid controller, right top eyelid controller, top eyelid controller. And the reason why we want to use a parent constraint instead of simply drag and dropping these and having it be a direct parent underneath is that if we move this thing, then only the controllers will basically like kind of move along with our top eyelid controller. But because locally these things don't really go through any like translate X and translate Y's, then the blend shapes for the eyes aren't going to be influenced. So for example, if I drag this up and down, you guys will notice that the intrinsic translate Y for the individual eye controllers is still 0. So instead what we want to do, instead of just directly parenting, we want to add a parent constraint. So then what happens is select the driver and the driven. All right, there we go. Is that what happens when you create a parent constraint is that when you move this up and down, then the eyelid motion will follow alongside the controller motion, because what's occurring is that these controllers translate Y's are actually changing value as you're moving the parent controller. Cool. So if you do this for literally every blend shape that you have left, which is a lot, then you have pretty much an entire kind of like a pseudo facial rig in some sense. Then afterwards you can animate it over and get some pretty cool expressions. So yeah,